Hi, I'm Holly DeWolf. I am a user experience consultant. That just means I help product owners and developers think about their software from a user's perspective. Today, I'm going to be going through the TeamUpStartup website with the mindset of an entrepreneur, because that's who your users are. But I'll also have my UX professional hat on, so I can keep an eye out for places where user experience best practices can be applied to make the user's experience better. I learned how to assess user experience designs from Bentley University. I have a master's degree in human factors and information design, and I've been designing and evaluating UX for about 7 years. I've read through your questionnaire explaining the business, and you're completely right on focusing on how to add users to your platform quickly. So I'll be going through this review with an eye towards easy onboarding and viral growth. Okay, so let's get started. TeamUpStartup. I don't typically watch videos. Sometimes if there's no information I will, but let's see what you have. Create a profile, describe professional experience, have an idea, collaborate, write posts, like blog posts, technical skills or experience, desire to help. That's something that I have. And launch your new venture. I mean, this is what would be interesting to me. So it seems like you've done this right by having a good quick overview of what the site is without relying on the video. Videos can be a good resource. Alright, it seems like a simple enough video. It's a little bit long, but you get the sense as soon as you get through it. So you get a little bit further into it. That combined with the information here, I think you've done a good job in explaining what the site is. Let's see if there's anything else to give some feedback on. See, when I clicked on how to use it, I expected, I guess, more nuts and bolts, but these are kind of tools and tricks for how to best use it, I guess. So you might want to consider testing the language here if it's something that's that conversion rates are something that you need to improve on this homepage to get people to sign up. All right, let's just sign up. Sign in using, so there are a lot of users out there that want traditional logins with email and password. If you're going to force the user to use one of their social media accounts, if there's a good benefit or reason why you're forcing them to do this, then make it clear what the benefit is to them, and it'll make it a little bit more likely that they'll actually use the social sign up. But I would suggest that you add email and password, traditional login, as well as these. So you don't even have Twitter. I guess I'll use Facebook. I've read and accept. Sure. Okay, so again, do I want to? No, not now. Invite my friends. Not now. I don't even know what this is yet. So you've done a good job of getting the user to sign up for the account, but they still don't know enough about this to be committed. And you've just given them 3 more pop-ups while they're in the task and the mode of figuring out whether or not they're going to commit to you. So you've just taken them off task 3 different times in the last 30 seconds. What I'd suggest is try to minimize those pop-ups and keep them on task for a longer period of time. Consider Pinterest has their terms and conditions just as part of signing up, and it says, fine print on the bottom. If you sign up, you agree to these terms and conditions, sort of thing. So that will eliminate that pop-up. And then the other 2 pop-ups, having your profile information put in. Consider doing that as part of when they actually need to fill in their profile. So right now I'm just exploring. I'm not sure what TeamUpStartup is about. I don't want to dedicate some overhead into filling out my profile yet because I'm not committed. So this first screen is going to be really key for you to give the user the information they need to be like, oh yes, I want to devote some time to this, and then consider what the next screen, what that next step is now that I'm committed, I want to add my profile information, and that's when you ask if they want their LinkedIn profile information here, and if they want to invite their friends. And that might come even further down the step, because if you think about the mental process for the user, they've committed enough. It's a series of commitments, right? Each one more costly, so to speak, to the user. So they've committed to signing up to your site already. You've done a good job at that. Then they need to commit some time to filling out their profile, and then they're going to commit to telling other people about the site. And each one is going to require a little bit more convincing on your part to let them know, yes, this service is worth that commitment. So let's see what this site is about. It looks like a feed of some sort for all of the actions that have been taken. A lot of stuff from this Smart Pop. What's that deal? A lollipop. An actual lollipop. I guess I wasn't expecting something physical. This is not really of interest to me. I guess let's search to see if there's something that I'd be interested in. Well, okay. Alright, so looks like there's a couple of users. Looks like those users have skills. Oh, that might be a bug there. That looks like that should be like some sort of description. But, let's see what Mario brings to the table. So I've come to Mario's page from searching usability, and I would have expected that right off the bat I'd get a sense of why he came up in that search. Obviously he must have usability somewhere in his, wow, that's a lot of information, somewhere in his profile. So now the user has to sort through all of this data. This person has taken the time to put all of this data into his profile, makes him very findable, but now I don't know what his connection to usability is. So make sure that you highlight the terms of the search when you get here. And while I'm at it, I'm ready to go back to my usability search, and there's no easy way to do that from here. I guess I'll just use the browser back button, but that's not a good thing for the user to do. There's a couple of reasons why. One, the browser back button is not always reliable for things like search. We'll see if it works for you guys. But 2, you want them to have the context of why they're here in the first place. So that context is going to be given to them in 2 ways. 1, with highlighting the search terms here in the profile, and also I would suggest some sort of breadcrumb to give them context. So, usability search. Now Mario. Oh, and that's exactly why you don't want to use the browser back button. Let's see what I can do here. Dashboard, I guess. That's frustrating. Usability. So maybe is it like, it looks like, oh look, usability testing. That's something I'm interested in. Oh, so this doesn't give me any more information than what was on the previous page, but so I would skip this entirely. And now I've lost the scent again. I remember that it was a skill, so I assume it's got usability in here somewhere. Usability testing right there. So my suggestion is to land the user on the tab that is most relevant for that search. So obviously I clicked here from skills, usability testing, land me right onto skills and interests so that I can highlight the term usability testing. Okay, so let's explore this idea of ideas. Let's say I want to build an app that better motivate my ideas, create an idea. Okay, before we leave that page, when you have an empty state like this, I don't have any ideas, obviously, that's not a big deal. I just signed up for this service, but to land me on a page that's completely blank other than telling me, hey, you don't have any ideas, and not even telling me you don't have any ideas, just kind of inferring that it's a little bit, it's not frustrating, but it's just not the best experience possible for the user. So I'd suggest maybe even a little note that says, this is the area for you to add ideas. Do you have an idea? No idea is too small, sort of thing, and have a button to create an idea here, because making the user search for create an idea is going to mean that there's just a little bit more overhead for them to actually create an idea, unless they're really convinced that they have a great idea they want to add. You're adding a little bit of friction there to so that they may not actually create a new idea. So my idea is so does this mean that if visibility is set to members of the idea, no one will be able to see it? Oh, no. I think you need to tweak the visual design of this page so that it's clear that this visibility is the description. Maybe even put this field next to the description field, or do something as simple as call this description visibility tags motivation app. All right, so I was expecting type ahead, like suggestions of tags other people have used or that are pre-populated in the system. That's not a big deal, but I don't know what I need to put here. Is it comma limited? Is it okay that I have a space? Is that going to be two different tags? Do I need to put a hashtag here? So it looks like I still don't know whether or not those tags worked. Application. It looks like they're comma delimited. I wonder if my not comma delimited will search. Oh, so I guess it searched all three. Huh. And I'm not the only one that did it. Okay. That's fine. Just that's an easy fix. Just make sure that it's clear in a tooltip or in the box itself. Before you enter into the box, what the requirements are for those tags, so it's clear to the user. Okay, so we have now idea pages, idea files, topics for discussions, and then my activity. I just created it, so there's only one thing there. That's a lot of overhead. I mean, I don't even know. This is just kind of I haven't dedicated a lot to this idea yet. And I'm just interested in seeing if other people are interested in this idea. And the idea of having to fill out pages and files and discussions, that's a little overwhelming. So what I would suggest on a page like this to be a little less overwhelming is progressive disclosure. So that's the idea of only disclosing the information that a user needs when they need it. If the user is in a mindset such as myself, where there's not a lot of, that hasn't been a lot of discussion, for instance, yet, then you probably don't need to create a number of different topics to discuss. I don't even have anybody that's part of this idea yet, so having one thread of discussion is okay. But once they add some people to the idea, then they might need to create topics. And so at that point, it's okay to progressively disclose the feature to have topics of discussion. So you might want to kind of hide some of these features underneath advanced settings until such a time that it makes sense to disclose them to the user. Okay, let's see if there's any ideas that I might want to join. Right, this was just the feed of things that have been happening lately. It doesn't give me a lot of information about ideas. Create, browse ideas. 114 ideas. That looks like it could be interesting. There's not a whole lot of information here. Did that change? Is that a bug? I guess maybe they don't have any pages yet. Yeah, because I didn't create a page for my idea. But it's not. Oh. Maybe I can't see the pages until I join. There's not a lot of information here. I don't really want to join the idea until I know more about it. This guy doesn't, I mean, obviously it's just kind of put, and I don't want to invite him to my idea. Well, I guess I could send him a message here. But I don't want to send him a message about, like a general message. I want to send him a message about that networking, whatever tool idea. Well, now I don't even know how to get back to that tool. Okay, so let's take a pause here. This has happened a couple of times now where I've lost context of what I'm doing. I went from browsing ideas to an idea that seemed interesting to the person who was responsible for that idea to message him. And we've already discussed before that the back button is going to be problematic for that. So once again, I would really encourage some breadcrumbs or some way to maintain context. So it doesn't need to be breadcrumbs. It could be that there's a navigation, a persistent navigation that kind of shows you at least where you are, where you've been. Or it can be breadcrumbs. In this case, I'd probably recommend breadcrumbs because that persistent navigation, it's going to change significantly. I mean, I could have gotten to that networking idea from a search rather than from browsing. And so the persistent navigation is probably not going to be ideal in that case, but breadcrumbs might be helpful. And then to address the second issue here is that I would really like to message Giancarlo about networking. I don't want to join yet. But it doesn't seem like there's any way to message him about this idea without messaging just him directly. At this point, I guess I'll just request to join. Request to join. Oh, requested to join idea. So I didn't see that. That was, in user interface terms, that message was quite far away from the action I was taking. And what I expected was for this request to join to turn to something like unjoin, to give me that feedback immediately at the place that I clicked. So a couple of suggestions on this page. First, change the request to join to something like unjoin, or withdraw request or something like that, to give that user immediate feedback that something has happened in the system, and not so far away from where it happened. And then the second thing I would suggest is maybe a secondary call to action, somewhere near the request to join, or over here where you've consistently put send message so far. I would have a send message one of these two places so that the user can send a message regarding this idea. Okay, let's go back to look at some more ideas I might be a part of, which once again is a little difficult without the back button. Browse ideas. So there's a whole lot of ideas here, and I'm passionate about a lot of different things, but I don't know that I want to just literally browse through 114 different ideas. And also, as I mentioned before, I'm interested in helping people who might need assistance with user experience and usability and things of that nature. So the search is good. It seems to, I don't know, motivation. it gives a lot of good information here, but it requires the user to come up with a search term. So what would be very helpful for the users is to be able to kind of browse through some broader categories of ideas, so they get a sense of what is in the system. It kind of gives them a viewport into the system without having to come up with search terms themselves. Places that do this really well are Pinterest and Kickstarter. Any application that kind of onboards the user with recommendations of what they should be looking for is going to be a good place to look to get an idea of how to better utilize categories for browsing. So let's look at the search results for motivation. It has my app in here. People that have work experience with motivation. I was kind of looking for some ideas. What are these? Ideas. Weren't there some people that had skills too? All right, so this is going to be confusing. This method of underlining the categories, I guess, that your search terms might turn up in is a little confusing, because if there are search terms, if motivation showed up in skills, then there's no way for me to know that, because the underline would also be red for this work experience. So I'd highly suggest that you have that maybe highlight this whole block in a different, still subtle color, to make it very clear which of these categories have search terms in them. Additionally, you might want to put how many search terms showed up. So how many times motivation showed up in skills, how many times motivation showed up in ideas, so that the user knows before they have to click on it, kind of gets them an information sent of how much. Yeah, see, there's stuff under skills. I would not have known that looking at work experience. So you need to give them the information sent, a better information sent of how much information is in each one of these categories. So I want to take a moment before we wrap up to talk about your questionnaire that you filled out regarding the priorities you have for the business and for this interface. And I think you're very right to point out that this is that you need users in order to make this a successful product. It's a social product. And so I would really suggest that you look at ideas about kind of viral business growth. Sharing is probably going to be something that's important to your product. I see that there's, you had that pop up for me to invite my friends. Once again, I would suggest that happens a little bit later in the process when I'm a little bit more committed to the tool. And a good place to do that actually is when I've contributed. So when I create an idea or when I make a comment on an idea, something that when I contribute content to your tool, then that's a signal to you. Check, she's interested. And at that point, you can ask, hey, do you want to share this with your friends? And then then it's in context. At the beginning of the process, I'm not quite ready to commit once again. But when I've shared something, then that's a signal to you that I'm interested enough in this tool that I might be ready to share. Quora does a really good job at doing this. Has simple checkboxes underneath all of its answers to say, do you want to share this on your Twitter feed or your Facebook feed, things like that. Overall, the usability of this site is actually quite good, with a couple of exceptions, which we covered obviously. It's very well laid out. You make good use of color for the calls to action and the secondary calls to action, and there's a good use of white space. The flow could use a little bit more help when the user first arrives at the site. This page for the feed is very good for an established user, but as a first page for a brand new user, there's not a lot of incentive yet to keep on exploring. And using those examples like Pinterest and Kickstarter, that gives the user a good onboarding sense of, these are things that you're going to be interested in. Like, check off some categories that you're interested in, and here's our suggestions. A suggestion engine for the ideas that a new user might find interesting is going to give you a better hook to continue to have them explore some more. Either that or a combination of the suggestion engine and having them create an idea up front might be a good idea. Having them land on to a landing page, a new user landing page, and say, do you have an idea? Let's get started on that. Or are you looking to help with ideas? Let's get started with that. Because your users might be coming to this site for one of those two reasons, or both, but giving them a kind of a driving force towards contributing towards something that they are interested in is going to really provide that hook to keep them motivated to explore some more. And then once they've explored some more, I think they'll have the idea. And like I said, everything is quite user friendly past that, with a couple of exceptions. So I hope that was helpful, and I wish you the very luck in your endeavors.